tranquility. I live in simplicity. I'm the measure of infinity. Yeah, I am in tranquility. I live in simplicity.
Ubuhle nembonakalo yale ngingqi ifihle inzingo zabahlali abahlangabezana nazo imihla nezolo. Le yilali impindweni ephansi komasipala wasenyandeni. Le lali imelene naleyo yasemangcwanguleni. Apha ayikho kwaphela indlela engena empindweni. Xa ufuna ukufika empindweni uwela umlambo okanye unyuke kwezintaba. Ukutyathwa komzimba womntu ongasekhoyo ukuqhelekile kulo mmandla.
Isizathu soba singakwazi ukusuka apha indawo esizalelwe kuyo kukhona abantu abadala asikwazi thina kuvela sisithi thina siyemka kule ndawo ngoba kaloku aba bantu bahlele apha bobokhe kule ndawo beyibonile beyithandile and basayithanda nangoku yeka nje into inkonzo ke singangeni ngoba kaloku unzima nokuxola kusuka uthutha izinto uthi yokha kwenye indawo kuba kaloku apho yakhona uzafika uqale phansi ubomi.
I'd like to welcome you in. This is Mii Kasi Su Kasii on the ACWS network, where we delve into the stories, the histories, and the unknown truths of our hood. Please, before we jump in, like, comment, subscribe, jump onto the bandwagon as we are approaching 150 subscribers. Once again, thank you very much for the 100 subscribers we are pushing on. They say the wind tells no lies, but you see in Eastern Cape, it carries the whispers of the ancestors, the cries of the dispossessed, and the laughter of the kids who never bowed. From the rolling hills of Utsolo in the Transkei to the hills of Xhosa Uyochamifuleni yasemthatha, the land remembers. Namhlanje siyamamela. This is the story of the land of the Eastern Cape, which is way more than just soil and stone. It is the cradle of resistance, intellect, and identity, a place where battles were fought not with just guns, but with mind, words, and courage. In the heart of Alice stands Fort Hare University, a fortress of knowledge, yes, but more importantly, a furnace of revolution. Here, minds like Nelson Mandela, Robert Sobukwe, Governor Mbeki, Oliver Tambo, they ignited and they colluded. Their pens carved strategies as sharp as their spears, as their debates were battles. From these classrooms, Black consciousness was born, teaching a nation that freedom starts in the mind. The Eastern Cape intellectual tradition was never passive. It challenged colonial logic, it questioned apartheid's morality, and crafted frameworks for the liberation that would ripple through or across the southern of Africa.
The University of Fort Hare in the town of Alice has produced thousands of Black graduates who are making their mark on South African society. It's also the home for the archives of the African National Congress and contains valuable articles, documents and photographs of the men and women who played a significant part in bringing about democracy in South Africa. Within its grounds are the remains of a fort, a reminder that the town of Alice grew around the military encampment called Fort Hare. During the 20th century, this part of the Eastern Cape was also the nursery of many great African leaders who received their early education here. It was a key area during the liberation struggle that brought democracy to South Africa.
Going to Fort Hare was really in a way, a very carefree time, but also a very serious time.
I still believe that I'm part and parcel of this university.
The University of Fort Hare is the university of my dream.
I always had the impression and the feeling that if I came to Fort Hare, I would be able to first and foremost meet people from all over Africa, because Fort Hare has that history of being a truly continental university.
Fort Hare really was a very, very special place in the sense that I don't think that anyone could stay there and be the same after staying there, especially as far as being sensitized to the problems that face Black people and the oppression of Black people generally.
Fort Hare is great, my dear friend. Fort Hare is great.
Long before the apartheid's borders, before homelands, before Bantustans, the Eastern Cape was a theater of fire and defiance. The Xhosa Frontier Wars, which were 9 in total, were not mere skirmishes. They were epochs of resistance. Great leaders like Chief Hintsa, Chief Maqoma, and Chief Sandile did not fight for land alone. They fought for sovereignty, for the right to exist as a people unshackled by foreign bounds. The key conflicts in the Eastern Cape included the War of the Axe, which occurred between 1846 and 1847. This was sparked by injustice, but it also ignited collective uprising. The Sixth Frontier War, which occurred in 1834 and 1835, where British and Boer forces conjoined and they used the scorched earth tactics to leave villages in flame and famine. The Ninth Xhosa War, which occurred between 1877 and 1879, this was considered the final colonial blow that never rested our spirit. Even as our kettle was burning and our homesteads were falling, the Eastern Cape's people survived. They continued to carry the memory of resistance in their songs, oral history, and in their lineage.
Bears the scars of 9 frontier wars. The first beginning in 1779 and the last one ending 100 years later. It was one of the most prolonged struggles by African people against European intrusion. The 7th Frontier War was started over the theft of an axe. It was stolen from a shop in Fort Beaufort, now a block of flats. The alleged thief Tsili was arrested and escorted to Grahamstown, handcuffed to a Khoisan prisoner. En route, the party was ambushed and the Khoisan's hand cut off to free Tsili. This is the grave of the Khoisan who died in the incident that sparked what became known as the War of the Axe.
Frontline battles were not confined to forts and battlefields. In Pondoland, Amabele and Amampondomise rose in rebellion against the Transkei homeland structures. You see, these were imposed by colonial and apartheid hands. Chiefs were coerced, manipulated, and even replaced. The people definitely knew the difference between a ruler by tradition or by right, or a ruler by law or decree. The rural uprisings, often which are muted in our textbooks, were loud and courage. Community-led militias defended their land and their livelihoods.
In the 1950s, I was organizing a national strike in Pondoland. The grievances of the Pondo people, the government was depriving their rights.
In the late 1950s, in tribal areas, the government imposed a system of puppet chiefs known as Bantu authorities. Owing allegiance not to the tribe but to the white government, they were resisted vigorously throughout the country, and especially in Pondoland. The Pondos were a peasant society far from the cities that had felt the shock waves after Sharpeville. Their pleas to the white commissioner were met with contempt. They were told to deal with the very chiefs who were the source of the problem.
So many questions to ask from the government, to please come and see us and tell us what is going on. He said, he has got no time for stupid Pondos. We decided to organize a strike.
The non-elected chiefs were corrupt and threatened tribal democracy. The Pondos set up mountains, people's meetings held on mountain ridges. It was an attempt at direct democracy.
The mountains were organized. About 100 mountains were organized because now we've got no chiefs, no what. The first resolution, we made it out that all the chiefs who are not in the organizations must be killed in all those districts, and stooges must be killed. Everybody was agreed.
The Pondos were in revolt. Besides an end to Bantu authorities, they wanted abolition of passes and of segregated education, and they wanted representation in parliament. For the white government, this was unthinkable. The Pondos would have to be crushed. A meeting of the mountains was convened at Xhosa Hill. This meeting was unusual. It had the permission of the authorities.
When we were on the way about to reach Xhosa Hill, we saw people coming running. When you asked the reason, stop all the buses, they said people have died in Xhosa. From 9:30, people have been killed by the police, armed police. We saw Saracens going ahead, police chasing people.
Dropping tear gas from helicopters, the police had ambushed the meeting, firing Sten guns at point-blank range into the crowd. In this planned massacre, the government later admitted to 11 deaths at Xhosa Hill. There were probably many more.
In Ginsberg, the birthplace of Steve Biko, the idea that black is beautiful became a doctrine, a prayer, and a weapon. You see, black consciousness did not just fight oppression. It healed minds, restored dignity, and whispered, "Your soul is your fortress."
Also in Alice is Lovedale College, an institution that has seen several famous African leaders, including Steve Biko, pass through its doors. Biko's political ideals live on long after he was tortured and died at the hands of apartheid security police.
It's about torture and murder in the Eastern Cape. How can one not think of Stephen Bantu Biko?
No evidence on his death at the hands of police interrogators in 1977 was heard at the Truth Commission this week because his widow, Ntsiki Biko, still prefers a criminal prosecution to the Truth Commission process. In his short lifetime, Steve Biko became known as the father of black consciousness.
Any changes which are to come can only come as a result of a program worked out by black people. And for black people to be able to work out a program, they need to defeat the one main element in politics which was working against them, and this was the psychological feeling of inferiority.
The history of the last decade of the struggle for liberation would probably have been different had he not died in 1977. On the 18th of August, Biko ignored his banning orders and drove to a political meeting. He was arrested at a roadblock and taken to the Sanlam building in Port Elizabeth. He was kept naked and in chains in room 619. Biko sustained serious head injuries during interrogation. In that state, and still naked, probably to humiliate him, he was taken by police van to Pretoria. Steve Biko died naked and on the metal grill on September 14, 1977.
The Ciskei and the Transkei were framed as homelands, but in truth they were tools. These were carefully engineered by the apartheid architects to fragment and control the masses. Education, employment, and resources were definitely manipulated. Youth were trapped between borders drawn on a map that they never asked for. The resistance was criminalized and the survival was definitely weaponized. Communities resisted in subtle ways: clandestine newspapers, underground radios, covert gatherings, and even acts of civil disobedience that history has often ignored.
I have just announced in Parliament details of the granting of self-government to the Transkei. The Transkei is the first Bantu homeland which has approached the government of the Republic to aid it by means of this great step on the road to independence, for which in its final form it rightly feels it is not yet ready. My government is prepared to grant the Transkei a new constitution, which will create a parliament and a cabinet of ministers based on the principles of Western democracy.
People of the Republic of South Africa are the most development of all the Bantu states in the continent of Africa. And there is no doubt that there is plenty of manpower for self-determination.
Are you expecting or are you hoping to gain international recognition now as a sovereign state, now that you have renounced South Africa?
In any event, we've never been part of South Africa since we became independent.
But people refuse to recognize you, don't they, as a Transkei?
Now they will know now that we are a sovereign state.
So you are hoping to get international recognition?
Let us hope they will recognize us.
Has recognition been promised to you by certain black African countries in return for renouncing South Africa?
Not at all. We've had no communication whatsoever with the black African states.
Who will you go now for help? Which particular countries will you appeal to?
Well, we feel that Great Britain is obliged to look after us.
Great Britain?
Yes. After all, we were a province, we were a colony of Great Britain. We are in this plight today because of the colonization by Great Britain.
You also mention in your statement to Parliament the assistance you will now give to the liberation movements who are fighting against South Africa.
We will speak the same language and we shall act together.
Today, Mpuma Koloni still carries its scars, undeveloped towns, forgotten heroes, and stolen narratives. Yet from Tsolo to Mthatha, the spirit of revolt survives. Black consciousness whispers in every town, every classroom, every shabin. The wind still remembers. So must we.
Isikolo siphelile, abantwana balapha singabazali. Asinayo imali yofundisa abantwana edolophini ngoba kuduru itransport. That means mnandi ndodwa ndinabantwana abayi4 abazafunda edolophini zawubhatala 2000 etransport ngenyanga.
Siyalila lesisikolo. Sisihambele lesisikolo. Tena education wakuthola abantu abahlele eziofisini mangenzinto. Tena education wasebhisho failing education wasithola. Ngicela ke uNG Bitserha asuke le eGauteng busePitori azolungisa isikolo esi. Uhlale phansi education wakuthola ufailisile plus nomhlolo wabo.
Isikolo ndasiyeka ingxaki sikude.
Uyisakala?
Ndoyisakala.
Kwakuthena unganyamezeli ngoba uyeke ukugrade bani esikoleni?
Bendikude.
Bukubani?
Kude.
U2 Bukubani?
Kude.
Isikolo esikhona sisebomvini bahamba ke lo mgama nabo lo 12 kilometers sithetha ngasithi ihamba khona xa sithwele umzimba ongasekhoyo bahamba abantwana ekseni kakhulu if kunetha imvula abazukwazi ukuya kodwa bangaba kuyabona bakunethi bayaya esikolweni bayofika ke esikolweni xa bebuya bahlangana namazulu ezichotho kusenzeka nje zonke izinto babe kulo ngxeba lethe imvula kodwa inxaba sinyamezela ukuba singenza njani kwaye futhi nexesha loba bangena esikolweni libashiye bangena bebadala abakwazi ungena na 5 years ngena sine 7
Reconciliation, like the rivers that carve the hills, moves slowly. Unlike the state's attempt to erase, that has continued to be relentless. This soil, this land, has birthed warriors, thinkers, and visionaries. From the cattle-ravaged valleys of the Frontier Wars to the lecture halls of Fort Hare, from the Pondo Lands hills to Ginsburg streets, the Eastern Cape is a testimony that our people must survive. Our people do survive, and hence we must resist, we must rise. We must remember them, we must continue to learn from them, and carry their stories forward. This was Mii Kasi Su Kasii episode 10, the walk through Eastern Cape's untold tapestry.
Awuhalela uba kube khona indlela apha?
Yo, ndihalela noma sendifike.
Awuzufa kaloku uzawulinda indlela.
Yini ndikayilinda njani ndikhathele uhlale ebomini?
Ukhathele ukuhlala ebomini?
Ndikhathele. Uhlale wedwa ubusuku bonke. Ulile uze sule.